The reality of being human is that we will be inevitably impacted by those around us. They influence us in different ways, some for the better, some for the worse. And as much as it is true that we will be impacted, it's really important that we be mindful of whose voice we live by, that we be mindful of how deeply we are impacted and influenced by those around us. Consider for a moment your life and the decisions you've made, maybe who you married, who you're dating, what school you went to, what you chose to study, your profession or career. Consider big aspects of your life where decisions had to be made. Now, as you consider these areas, ask yourself whose voice was in the driver's seat. Was it your voice? Was it your intuition, your feeling? Or was it this sort of reverberation or echoing of someone else? They had their own thoughts and ideas of the path your life should take. You felt inclined to pursue something that made you feel all lit up inside, awake, passionate, driven toward this light. But perhaps someone around you said, oh no, you can't really earn a living that way. You're not going to get a job. That's not really going to pan out. Or, I know that you've been with this person for a few years and you have all of these feelings about this person, but ultimately I don't think they're best. You need to pursue someone who is more stable, who comes from a better family. Maybe their profession is held to a higher esteem. Ask yourself who's driving the big decisions of your life. And I'm thinking about this today because it's so important that we learn how to hear our own voice. How to drown out the voices of other people in order to become clear on what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and really what we're feeling. And it isn't to disregard or dismiss the thoughts and ideas of others. We may welcome that, but it doesn't mean that your opinion has to become my own. The thoughts that you may have about the path of my life, I might be inclined to listen to you, right? To hear you, even to consider some things. And yet, if it is not my truth, I need to be mindful not to act as if your opinion is my truth. Often we do that. We dismiss ourselves. We don't feel as confident in our own voice as we do in someone else outside of us, who may have all the best intentions and all of that. They want to see us shine. But it doesn't mean that their voice is actually the light, the flashlight that we fall under. There's nothing wrong with being impacted and influenced. Again, that's part of the way of being a human. We see many things, we hear many things, and we can't say, oh, I don't care, nothing bothers me, and I'm not affected. Okay, that's an extreme. Then there might be some layers we need to peel back there, right? To care doesn't mean that I lose myself. It means that I'm open enough to hear. I'm open enough to consider. Now, the truth comes around the mountain when we consider and hear, and then we take a step back and we reflect and we say, well, I can see where that person is coming from. I can see the perspective they're holding, and that makes sense from their position and place. They're on the outside looking in. From mine, the reason why I'm making these decisions is because from within my own experience, I've arrived at a different truth and knowing for myself. How comfortable are you when it comes to making those decisions? How comfortable are you with really standing in the light of your truth? And depending on the culture we're from, how we're raised, that could be a big deal to go against the grain, to do things differently. It might feel scary. We're putting ourselves at a kind of risk. Do we lose friends and family? Do we have to leave our homes? What becomes the consequence of following our truth? Sometimes the consequences weigh too heavily, and so we don't follow our truth. We stay within the box. There's no judgment there. There's just the reality and truth of knowing that. And it's important that we acknowledge that within ourselves. My truth is A, but I'm going to go with B for X, Y, and Z reason. That's awareness. Unfortunately, as time passes, we get older, we start to go, I wish I had chosen A after all, because B has left me sort of miserable and unfulfilled and dissatisfied. I never liked this job. I never saw myself as being a lawyer. I became a doctor because it was expected of me. But I really wanted to be an artist, a designer, a public speaker, a podcast host, whatever it is. I really wanted to pursue athletics, to teach, to dance. I wanted to travel the world before getting married and having children, but the expectation was that I do all of this now. And I followed it, and now I feel like I made a big mistake. And sometimes we do learn in this reverse way. Hindsight is 20/20. Sometimes we do learn 10 years into the future. There's nothing wrong with that. When our knowing comes around, it's important to sit with what we know and what we've learned. When the learning shows up, do we pay it attention or do we push it down? Who's guiding the big decisions in your life? Who's guiding those big decisions in your life? And from a personal place, when I was 18, my mother learned that basically I liked women. And there was a big to-do about that. To say that it was not okay is to really call that experience lightly. It was beyond not okay. But at 18, in the midst of the experience of it all, I opted to turn away from my mother and choose myself. I opted to follow what was true for me over what she didn't like or what her expectations were. And I have not a single regret for doing that. Fast forward years later, of course, she's come around the mountain. All is quote unquote well. But in that moment, that was a huge moment and a huge decision I had to make at 18, and I made it in a blink. Because I recognize even then that we get one life. And that I needed to choose my own path, even if later it turned out otherwise, even if it were a phase, I still chose it because in that moment, it was my truth. And in all of the moments thereafter, it has remained. So I share that little bit and without any detail, because it isn't about the detail, it's about the overarching matter. When we know what is our truth within, it's important that we access that and begin to see things clearly so that we can make choices that reflect our truth, because that is the way of the path and the path of the way. When we're operating from clarity and truth and reflection, we become rightly guided in our lives. The inner alignment becomes an external reality. So today I really want to encourage us all to consider who's in the driver's seat of our lives, whose voice is pushing the biggest decisions we'll have to make. Is it your voice, or is it the voice of another? When I am facing big decisions, whose voice do I hear? And am I allowing that voice to have the loudest reverberation? May we pause long enough to go within and access what's true for us, and from that place make decisions so that we can honor the way of our going and go there from a place of truth. May it be.